Dr. Weissman, thank you very much for joining us in our Udemy course. I've already looked into a lot of your podcasts already, and I'm very impressed by your research and your knowledge that you've shown, and your ability to target even aspects such as gaming addiction, which I believe is very important. So thanks for joining us. And I was wondering in particular, what has spurred your passion for becoming a clinical psychologist and then eventually specializing in internet addiction?
Well, definitely first, thank you for having me on, and I look forward to helping and adding whatever value I can today. So what inspired me to get involved originally into just the world of psychology was going back to high school. I was a founding member of my school's peer support team, which is like a peer counseling team. And we actually had a really cool training and experience because one of the parents was in the FBI, and he was on the peer counseling team for the FBI. So we actually got to go down to the FBI building on Wilshire, which is in the middle of Los Angeles, the main FBI building there, go all the way up to like the 7th floor, which usually you only get to go to if you have clearance or handcuffs. And we got to meet with their team. And just through experiences like that, going to different conventions and learning peer counseling techniques, peer mediation, getting to talk, learning how to actively listen to people, that really drew me in. And I got to use those skills a little bit in high school. And then when I got to college, I actually went in undecided, took intro to psych, and I was sold. I had a great professor for my intro to psych class, and I was like, okay, I love every part of this. I'm going to declare this as my major, went on to get my master's, got my doctorate. If there was something after doctorate, I'd probably get that too. But I think I'm good for now. So now it's just a matter of the specialty and doing what I can in the field. So when I was finishing my doctorate education, I knew I wanted to go either forensic psychology, looking at families, child custody evaluations, or something along those lines. But I realized child custody evaluators get sued the most of any psychologist, and they also have the most board complaints because they're very passionate about their kids and they want to blame somebody. So I figured I won't do that. I was also looking at neuropsychology and internet addiction. So I'm actually doing both of those now. My practice that I work in, which is called Neurosense Psychology, the website neurosense-psychology.com for more information about that. It's in Calabasas, and we do pediatric neuropsych assessments, and that could be just a battery of anything. It could be as, ADHD screener, autism, all the way to brain trauma and birth defects. So we'll get all ages from birth to adult, and it's phenomenal. So I love doing that. And then I've also developed a program there called CyberSense Power Up, which is a 6-session treatment and psychoeducation model for just kind of early intervention for internet addictions. And if you caught CyberSense Power Up CPU, you like what I did there?
All right. Yeah. Good.
But yeah, so I guess how I got into internet addiction specifically, going back to the original question, I was looking for my dissertation topic, and I have this book. Actually, I have it somewhere here on this desk. It was a pocket guide to a dissertation, and I knew I wanted to go social psych, but I didn't know what. I thought, some boring, stuffy thing. But then I read some article or a title of a dissertation that said something about Camelot. I was like, whoa, that sounds cool for me. And I was like, I want to do something like that. So I actually ended up doing my dissertation on MMORPGs, or massively multiplayer online role-playing games. I looked at how much time people spend on that and how they feel about themselves in relation to others. So do they feel connected with others while they play or not? And then I used a few different scales to measure that. And then that dissertation is published. You can find it for free on my website, dustinweissman.com. There's a link right on the homepage, and it'll take you straight to it. So I think kind of answered. So, I've always been in that. I've loved gaming. I love the internet, and I just when I saw that my dissertation was very well received. It's been downloaded now in over 50 countries. And I knew that, okay, this is something I want to do, and I'm going to keep pursuing it. So that's been my specialty that I've been focusing on in the last, ever since graduating from grad school. So I decided that's my passion, but I also somehow was able to figure out how to get neuropsych in there too.
Right.
And occasional forensics, because we do get forensic cases for like brain injury. So I kind of somehow figured out how to get all three of my paths into one.
Well, that's the best case scenario. Well, that's quite a story. I can see how it all links together, starting off with the neuroscience, moving on to the child psychology element, and then obviously, of course, with kids being immersed in gaming consoles and mobile apps, it's clear to see the transition into internet addiction and gaming addiction. So that's pretty clear. And, based on your experiences with treating internet addiction and gaming addiction, what would you say are the main causes of this?
Well, it's hard to say cause, because there could be numerous ways people get involved in any of the internet addictions. Specifically, looking at gaming, I mean, you can also have a smartphone, you can have pornography, gambling, but just looking at gaming specifically, people go on for leisure, and you can go and play for an hour or two and then get off and you're fine. Or you can go for 4 hours on the weekend maybe and log off. If it doesn't impact your life in any other way and it enriches it, then that's fine. You don't have a problem. But for the ones that do have a problem that can't easily transition, that's when you'll see these behaviors, and they might present themselves as impacting their lives in other ways. So are they being more argumentative? Are they having more anxiety? Is their attention span less? Are they feeling more depressed? So once you see some of these other symptoms evolve, that's when you can recognize, okay, there might be a problem. And certain personalities might be more drawn to it, but we also have to look at the other side of the game itself. They have lots of rewards and hooks and crannies and ways to draw the user in. One thing I talked about recently was like the special events. So they'll have this rare item. You see this in like Pokemon and actually anything. Yeah. I know Disney Kingdoms, which is another mobile app, they'll have a special event all the time for, Snow White's here or Wreck-It Ralph is here. And you only have a week to get as many crystals as you can to unlock it. Or in Pokemon, you might have like a rare Pokemon you have to go and chase, and you need to do this and this and this. One of my clients telling me about chaining, and I had no idea what it was, but it sounded interesting.
In my experience, I used to play a lot of Call of Duty, and there was a lot of challenges which were very addictive. Like you had to get this many kills or this many headshots or this many, and you always, the goalpost kept shifting so much, and you just couldn't help just getting lured into that whole competition in a way.
And the companies will say, well, if you can't get in time, you can just pay a few dollars and get it.
Yeah, sure.
Wow. But yeah, it's designed to get you to have these bursts of energy where you're putting all that in. If you're in a shooting game and you want to try to raise your rank as high as you can, as fast as you can. And that's why we've seen Fortnite grow so big, because of the seasons. So you'll probably see a huge surge in gameplay every time they restart the season, because that's when people get their first burst to get it's like the starting line of a new race. Everyone wants to fight the top position.
Sure.
So, all these games have many different, that's just one thing. If you get on a more basic level, we can look at the colors, the sounds, and how they interplay, sometimes the music involved. There's lots of different things that keep you engaged. So there's just the simple aesthetics of it. And there's also the social aspects of these games. So you have, if somebody's going online to find a relationship, or they're going to foster a relationship that they might have, whether it's with somebody in real life they know, or it's somebody they just met online. I'll have clients who have a best friend who's in a different country, or they'll be playing with the best friends that they go to school with, but they're not doing anything else. They might see them physically at school. I actually did a school observation recently where I saw my client, and he was staring at his phone a lot. he was engaged with his friends, but every few seconds he'd show his friends something on his phone. So it's a huge medium that is used between adolescents, especially now, because that's just what they've been brought up with.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of the points you mentioned are to do with the design of the product itself and the different in-app purchases or different in-game purchases. And it looks like a lot of it is have sort of a cognitive psychology element to it, the way it can just pull in, grab your attention. And I think for the last point you mentioned, it kind of touches upon a bit kind of a sense of peer pressure, in the sense that everybody's doing it and everyone wants to be part of that club, that social group, and to be accepted because it's kind of what's really hot right now, what everyone's doing. So yeah, you're right to be cautious in terms of causes. It's more like what triggers gaming addiction, what triggers addiction. A lot of the factors you mentioned, of course, we wouldn't be able to control that. We can't just email the owners of these companies and say, stop designing this way, make it more simple. Of course, we can't do that. But
actually, I just did email the CEO of Netflix last week.
Oh, did you?
I don't know if he'll get it, but he said that sleep was his biggest enemy, or Netflix's biggest enemy. This was earlier this year or last year. So I emailed him my thoughts on that statement, and figured out I would do it directly. I was going to do Twitter, but I figured, you know what? I'd rather actually try to see if we can adjust something here.
Right.
But you can email. You can reach out to these companies. They're not impossible to contact. You don't know if you'll get through to them, but I think if they got 100 million emails from users saying, I would like to stop playing your game, but it's so addictive I can't, I need help, can maybe we change something here or there, then some of the programmers might be able to work with them. Granted, it is a business and that's the model they want.
Sure.
And many users are using it just fine without the addiction, but there are many also who struggle. So finding the balance, and sometimes that could be by reaching out to them, reaching out to loved ones for help, reaching out to a mental health professional like myself, or reaching out to professors. Anybody that knows a little bit about this who might be able to steer that person in the right path could be a really effective tool.
Interesting. Well, yeah, for the purpose of this course, essentially just to see for individuals what they can do themselves to at least combat it if, say, approaching companies doesn't necessarily work. I mean, that would be a good long-term solution for everybody to get into. I wouldn't say boycotting, but maybe that's a bit extreme. But I mean, because obviously it's becoming the culture right now, and I suppose whether we like it or not, a lot of people are very into it. I mean, we couldn't just close down the internet for good. So I guess it's being able to use technology consciously and being able to find and draw the line between your offline and online self and your outside game world, the inside game world, and seeing. And for a lot of kids, I think it's kind of like they're being sucked into it, but they don't know kind of how to draw the line and see the different benefits of life outside of the gaming world. And I mean, personally, I've been there as well. Like I used to play like 6 hours worth of Call of Duty back when I was like 16 years old. And but then I'd find, it just made me a bit dizzy after a bit. And then sometimes, you lose track of sometimes how many meals you're having in the day, and then eventually things add up and you just kind of it's so easy just to get locked in. And that's the thing, it's just about being able to strike a good balance. And one thing I like to
word. You said balance. That's the one takeaway that I can give anybody. Is strike the balance.
Exactly. And what I would like to ask in particular is, what would you say are the best ways to recover from internet addiction and treat it? If you're talking about, say, daily habits or daily things, routines, or, I mean, you touched upon it previously in terms of seeking help. Is there anything you could add to that in terms of what you could do individually?
Yes, I think more for the layperson who isn't at the extreme. If you're at the extreme, then, a residential treatment center might be the best way to do it, or an intensive outpatient treatment. But if you're not there, which most people probably are not, because they're not watching this, because they're, able to divert from gaming to actually, learning, and they're curious, or you could be watching for a loved one right now. So for that, one thing I recommend is putting a phone tracker, if that's your means, if you're on your phone playing your games, I use Quality Time for Android. Moment is really good for iPhone. And this is just to create awareness and mindfulness of your own use. It'll give you your daily updates. Like every day, mine will say that I was on for 2 hours or 3 hours, and I unlocked my screen 156 times, or whatever it may be. And the app I used the most was Gmail, which is probably more accurate.
Right.
But, if you're on your computer, there might be an app for that. I'm not sure. And if you're on a console, it's going to be completely different. But also letting other people help hold you accountable. I think when you have somebody holding you accountable for your screen time, then you're a lot more likely to uphold it. And giving yourself some wiggle room. If you say, I'm going to do it for 2 hours today, I'm only going to look at the screen for 2 hours today, and you go for 2 hours and 10 minutes, that's good. I mean, if you're coming off of doing it 4 hours a day, then that's fantastic. 6 hours a day, that's remarkable. So if you're coming from 2.5 hours and you get down to 2 hours and 10 minutes, it's improvement. And recognizing the improvement and acknowledging that for yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you cross the line, or don't beat up somebody else if they're crossing the line that you set. One thing that's good with parents to do with their kids is a smartphone contract. And you can find this online easily. Just type iPhone contract, and you get to do it together. And it's a template that you can get online, but you can create something that works for you that both parties agree on. So the kid and the parent can say, you know what, this is what we like. I'll do this, I'll do that. You commit to it. If you can't uphold it, then you revisit it and adjust it. It doesn't need to be punitive. It's just, let's work within this with what's the system is right now, or the contract, whatever it is, it's not working. So let's adjust it so that it can work. And then just work for a little progress. So those are a few things just to recap: the contract, a phone tracker with app, being mindful of your time online, and then also engaging in other things, trying to seek out other people in real life scenarios, trying to keep the phone away.
Looking for substitutes.
Some restaurants now will have like pouches or bowls for your phone when you go to eat them, so you engage one another. It's more of a social media thing, less of a gaming thing. And then if you're going to be, exploring something online, well, maybe you should call up those same friends and see if they want to get together and explore something outside. Go for a hike, go for a walk, go play basketball.
Yeah, see, so it's, touching on the last point you mentioned, it's, I suppose you could, utilizing the network you already have, the pre-existing network, even within the same console, you could use that to then fast track you to the offline planning of meeting up the same way you would with your phone, but just whilst you're in the game, you can then transition together outside. Unless, of course, you're talking to people alongside the world. But either way, no, it's. I'm glad you mentioned those points. And
even if there are people across the world, then if you have an interest, you can go to a site like meetup.com, where you can find a mutual interest group and go and do it. You can make new friends. I know it's terrifying sometimes to engage, especially for the younger generation who hasn't really been given as much of an opportunity to develop their social skills. So any kind of a social encounter can be a lot more anxiety provoking for them than it might be for a millennial or somebody from generation X or Y. So we understand that, but it's not going to get better if you don't push yourself.
Sure.
Sorry, you're saying.
Brilliant. No, it's just it's good. You mentioned those points. A lot of it. It's good that there's already measures in place. There's certain. You mentioned was the iPhone tracker? Did you say? Something like that?
On iPhone, it's Moment. Moment.
Yes.
And for Android, I use Quality Time.
Right.
And that's just the one I use. It doesn't come on it, but Moment, I believe, is made by Apple. So most of you probably have Apple phones, and I'm a oddball with the Samsung. So
right,
for those
I'm a
of you out there with
person
Android,
myself, but I mean, it's good that you mentioned that. I'll actually attach that to this lecture actually, so that other people are aware of this. It's good you mentioned those products in particular. Those are really good, useful tips. I was wondering as well, are there any words of advice you would give to parents for those who are supporting their children as they're transitioning to weaning off the gaming addiction or internet addiction?
Yeah. So if you're a parent and your kid is younger, you're in much better shape.
Right.
If they're in elementary school, I'm not sure if you call it something different. We have elementary school, middle school, and high school.
It's primary school.
Yeah, so in primary school, up to about age 11, I'd say, then you have complete control as a parent over smartphone use. I actually recommend not giving them a smartphone. And in terms of gaming console, that's a lot easier to manage because you can just take away the power cord. they can't get online.
Okay.
And then same with a tablet. Another tip for parents would be to not let them sleep in the same room as their device. So have them turn it in at a certain time, usually like 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
This is also good probably for adults too, to have devices in another room charging. And if you're saying, no, I use it as my alarm clock, buy an alarm clock. They're not that expensive, and it's good for your mental health, just having it in a different room. This is if it's a problem. If it's not a problem, then it's up to you. It's also good to not look at a screen an hour before bedtime.
Sure.
So that goes for adults as well as the kids. And let's see, for kids who are in like age 12 to 14, I'd say, I'd give them more leeway, but still hold a tight leash on the smartphone use. But then when they get to what we have here, high school, would be age about 14 to 18. They're pretty much independent. Their whole pure world revolves around some of these games and smartphone use. And with that, I think it's just important to talk about it with them. So the whole time, throughout their whole life, the best thing you can do as a parent is having a conversation weekly, regularly about smartphone use, tech use with your kids. Talking about, what did you see online? What's something interesting you saw? Was there anything that you saw that was weird, disturbing? Do you have any questions about anything you saw? Anything funny? Anything sad? How did you feel this week looking at your smartphone or playing your games? Tell me about what you're doing. Did you go on a quest in your game? Did you shoot people in your game? Do you enjoy that? Do you like when people kill you? Do you like when you kill people in the games? What does that mean? Do you think the respawn time is too long? Just really engage them in their world. One thing that parents, I think, lose sight of is that today's youth, their games are much like earlier generations sports. So they're gaming celebrities that they're watching YouTube videos, because parents don't understand this. They watch YouTube videos of somebody else playing a game. We do the same thing when we watch sports. We're watching somebody else playing a game. So yes. You're seeing somebody who's in the top 1% or top 10% or whatever it might be of that particular game or in that industry performing. So you're probably learning from it. You're watching. You're being entertained by them, just like we are with sports. This is their world, just like for me playing soccer and watching basketball growing up, and now those are things that I like to do. I'm watching somebody else play a game. I like to play it too, but I'm not going to play it all the time. Sometimes I want to watch somebody who's really good at it. So that's what these kids are doing. They're going to be watching somebody who's really good at it, and they're impressed. One of my clients showed me a video of this really top person in Russia who's on Fortnite and just building walls and attacking crazy fast things. It was like, oh, the top two people against each other. There's a video of it. So that's like watching a championship game. So it's important, I think, for parents to wrap their head around that this is important to the kids and why it's important, just to understand them a little bit better.
Yeah, there was a side where you mentioned the questions where most kids aren't used to their parents showing an interest in their games. It's kind of, for me, there's a part of me that felt it was a bit counterintuitive, because I'm used to like having the parent be the person to just end the game completely and be like, no, get rid of this, what are you doing? But to have it where they're actually joining in the experience, I can see how that can be very empowering for the child,
Yeah.
to feel like, because then it doesn't really make it into like a taboo. Then it becomes like, oh, okay, I can relax and just do it in my own time. Don't need to, hoard it and control it and keep it, shield it away from everybody else,
Right.
because that will encourage them to just, there's a saying like, what you resist persists. Like, if they
Yes.
hold on to it, then it just becomes a necessity rather than, just enjoying the game when you need to, when you feel like you need to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
There's nothing wrong with playing a game with your kid. I mean, even
yeah,
if you suck, that's fine. They don't care. As long as it doesn't affect their rankings. It does.
sure, yeah,
Uh, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with. They would probably love to teach you, and especially if you have that kind of relationship from day one of gaming, where they feel comfortable talking to you and sharing with you. They'll let you in their world, and then you can explore it. My caution here is don't get sucked into that world to the point where you now have a problem too, where you're playing
sure.
at night on your Fortnite game and trying to, beat your kid. That's not the point here. The point here is just to understand their world better and ask them
Mm.
open-ended questions. What are you doing? Or why did you put that there? Or how did that guy get around so fast? Or just anything. Very open-ended questions, not the yes/no questions.
Yeah, so it's like changing an attitude of resistance to openness
Mhm.
and making it more so that they're asking open questions and not seeking to understand rather than seeking to be understood from the parent side, so that it doesn't result in a conflict, rather just a communication of two different perspectives, which is interesting. Yeah, I suppose I can really much relate to the misunderstandings they have, where sometimes I'll be watching something on my laptop, and then I'll get a bit of resistance from my parents. They're wondering what's the point in this, or why are you doing this, and why are you spending so long on this game, why are you spending so long on YouTube, for example. But no, you hit the nail on the head there when it comes to, yeah, because it's kind of, to us, we're building our world, it's our reality. And I used to spend a lot of time playing role player games because it feels in the moment like you're engaging in a new world and you're creating
Mhm.
possibilities. And yeah, I'd wonder, looking back, just to see what it'd be like if they actually showed the same level of interest, whether things would change. I think you're right. You've definitely hit the nail on the head there. So thanks very much for sharing that with us. And that's pretty much the main questions we have for today's session. So yeah, thanks very much again for sharing your insights with us,
My
Dr.
pleasure.
Weissman.
Thank you.
And for those listening in, I'll attach all the information, all the links, and all the other products Dustin has mentioned earlier. And if you'd like to know more about these services, but for now, thanks for your time and take care.